Okay, good evening and good morning and good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in. My name is Anirban, and I want to welcome you on behalf of uh, Tennis Wizard to the US College Tennis Recruitment Guide, the webinar. So, this is the second webinar we are doing, and primarily we're doing this webinar, in a very short span of time from the last one, because few people have missed it, and there has been some specific request of going through the webinar again. So I wanted to thank everybody. The way we are going to run this webinar today is, we're going to go through a few slides, and after each slide, what I'm going to do is, there's quite a bit of content that we are covering. Our goal is to really educate the parents or the players, whoever's joining in, about the whole process, kind of the very high level basics, so you can take the information and you can go and do it yourself. We are a platform, so it's a consulting platform. So if you choose to come with us, we help you do it for a fee. It's, the fee is lower than a lot of consultants what they charge, but regardless whether you come to us, you go to a consultant, or you go at it yourself, you need to be armed with certain basic information, for a variety of things. And the goal today is going to be for me to cover all those areas. So again, feel free to ask the question. Uh, After every slide or during the slide, I'm going to pause for questions. You can ask, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can use the meeting chat, which I opened up on the side, and you can ask there as well. So again, I want to thank everybody to join this call, and we're going to go ahead and proceed, because now, just to keep it up with the time, so we have about an hour and a half slotted out, but probably it takes, especially if there's not a lot of questions, it takes a little bit less time. However, there's quite a bit to cover, and we're going to be covering this. And then, since you joined the webinar, you'll also get, from our team, you're going to get a copy of this presentation. So if you have any questions and things like that, you can obviously ask later. So I want to give you a little bit background about myself, so you know kind of why I think I qualify to speak on this, or our company does. So I am the co-founder of this platform. I've played Division 1 college tennis. As a matter of fact, I've also played, which I don't have that in the slide. I've also played for Division 2 and NAIA, which is quite unique, because typically you cannot play for three. And the reason it worked is I went to a college, a D2 college, which was, the program got cut. So I got an extra year where I could move and play for another school. And then I went to an NAIA, and then eventually I ended up playing in a D1 college. And, I was ranked in top 50. I moved on, and that sort of helped. So I have a kind of a broad experience in college tennis playing. So I'm a PTR certified tennis professional. So there's, the which is the Professional Tennis Registry. So I'm a professional coach myself. I've been also an assistant D1 college coach. So I have the experience of, the recruitment side from the coaching side, and the running the team and all that. So I do a few other things. So I'm an investor right now at a tennis club in the Dallas Fort Worth area. That's owned by the Taylor Dent family. So Taylor was, 21 in the world. His father was number 4, and his wife was 20 or 52 in the world. So so when they came in, they had a couple of other investors join in, and so I'm one of them. So I've been part of the club. I also volunteer my time with USTA. I am currently in the board of directors for USTA Texas, and I'm also the chair of the USTA Texas Experience Council, and I'm a member of the USTA National Pro Circuit Committee. So, and I got 2 kids that are playing ITF juniors. So, they're 16 years old. They're pretty actively playing ITF. So the reason to say all this is not to really tout my own horn, but just to give you an experience that I've kind of gone through the shoes, right? Like all of them, as a coach, as a player, and also like now as a parent. So I do understand sort of the pain points, what you're looking for. So I want to give you a little bit background of the company that owns Tennis Wizard. It's called CompuMatrix. So I'm one of the 2 co-founders of it. We started this company in 2011. It's a software company primarily towards we deliver patient engagement for healthcare. So we have been working in this space for a long time. And what we did with Tennis Wizard is we brought the concept of patient engagement health delivery to the tennis market. So, there's a very effective way of giving the messaging just in time. And tennis didn't have that. So we kind of repurposed our software and we brought the knowledge base and the experts and all that and put it into tennis. So that it gives you a context about how the company got started, our background, and so on and so forth. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and kind of jump right in today what we're going to cover today. So, here's the table of content today. So, we're going to cover today the different organizations that run college tennis. What are the different divisions, the tournament structure. So there is a quite a bit of misconception, and I've been traveling for the last month and a half. I'm actually in Sri Lanka with my son right now for an ITF, but I was in India for about 4 weeks, and a lot of people have misconceptions about the divisions and how it works and all that. So hopefully we cover a little bit of that. We talk about the scholarships, like the types of scholarships that players get and how it differs, and how a package looks like. So we talk about a pro pathway, is it realistic? What college offers, the plus, the pros and the cons, things like that. We get into a little bit of NIL. This is a very new concept. Many of you may not have heard this. It's called name, image, and likeness. It's basically how an athlete can monetize their brand, right? Through social media or marketing, things like that, and get paid and not lose eligibility. So there is quite a bit of confusion in this. So we're going to sort of, at least on a high level, cover it so you're aware of it. And at the very end, we're going to talk a little bit about what we do as a platform where we can help. Should you choose to work with us, you can work with us free or at a nominal fee. And then also we talk about things to be aware of, right? Like so that in this whole process, you don't become non-compliant. And then the last thing is, this is something that if you download our app, it's a free of cost. You can download our app and you get the access to me to ask any questions, right? So the second opinion, whether it's directly for college tennis, the playing pathway, just think of it almost like, getting a second opinion. So that you could do regardless, because you joined the call and if you download the app. So so that's the high level what we're going to cover, going forward today. All right. So this is the first kind of key slide. So how is college tennis organized? So the first thing I want to talk about is division. So there are really three. Actually, there are three types of main governing bodies that run college tennis. So one is the NCAA, which is the biggest one. Then you have uh, the NAIA, which is another set of governing bodies, and I'm going to go through that in just a bit. And then you have something called junior colleges, right? So the junior colleges, there's really two organizations that run it. For the practical purposes, we're going to cover NJCAA, right? That's the biggest one, and there is also another one in California. The like a consortium of California community colleges. We are not going to cover that today because once you know about NJCAA, it's very similar and that's really less prominent. So we're just going to stick with this three divisions today: the NCAA, the NAIA, and the NJCAA. Okay. So NCAA is the biggest one, right? So you hear about NCAA everywhere. So this is the biggest governing body for tennis, and NCAA divides itself in three divisions: Division One, Two, and Three. Okay. When I've been traveling in India, a lot of people think that it's like the Division One is the best in tennis, two is next, and three, like almost like, if you're looking at the English Premier League or La Liga or something like that, the one is the highest, two, and then three. That's not the case at all. Okay. So let me explain this. So how the divisions work is really the size of the university, the number of sports they have. There is a whole slew of criteria what decides what division a college or an university comes in. Okay. And we're going to interchange these terms, right? The college, university, or school. So they are basically exactly the same when we are talking about. So we don't need to get into the details of college versus university and school. They just used it kind of a slang calling both of them. Okay. So again, the main key part here is the Division One, Two, and Three. It's not really based on the tennis criteria, but it's really more based on the size of the school, the number of sports, the total funding, and a slew of other factors. Okay. So that being said, Division 1 typically has the largest amount of sports, right? So they are the big budget programs. And then when you look at the elite programs in Division 1, the big names that you hear, that you watch the football games, right? Like the Alabamas, the Stanfords, the Michigans of the world. Obviously, they have more money, they have more glamour, and they generally recruit well, so the teams are better. Okay. But with that said, there are several colleges that are not as prominent and they have great teams. And I'm going to talk about that. Okay. So, so just to keep that in mind. So Division 1 are the biggest, they have more money, they have the more sports, and they are the sort of the bigger consortium of colleges. Okay. Division 2 are generally smaller universities and colleges. um, they could be both private and public. And so in tennis in Division 2, also there are really, really good teams, right? Because a lot of them recruit foreigners, or actually most of them recruit foreigners heavily. So it's not uncommon to see Division 2 teams who have former players like ATP players in 750, 800 in the team, right? It's absolutely not uncommon. So again, don't get too locked in about the division, but just know that 1 and 2 can both be very competitive. It depends on the university, so you have to do your research a little bit on that, how they are structured. Okay. Division 3 is a little bit different. Division 3 does not offer any sports scholarships. So typically they are private universities, they're expensive schools, but they're more academic centered schools. Okay. So Division 3 is a little bit different. However, there are top Division 3 universities which have exceptionally good quality of tennis, right? So the players come in nowadays, they get into this Division 3, but they want to play, like for example, like I know a lot of kids that have gone to Swarthmore, right? So it's a very elite college, but they got a very high UTR players that can compete with mid-major D1 colleges. So again, they don't give any academic scholarship and they're more academic focused. So that's sort of the difference between 3 versus 2 and 1 when you look at NCAA. So outside of NCAA, there is also another division called NAIA. So NAIA is a consortium of small colleges. So there are some NAIA colleges which are literally like they're full of professional players, and one is a legendary one called Georgia Gwinnett. If you look at Georgia Gwinnett roster over the years, I think they have not lost a match in 5 years or so, and the players are, they routinely recruit, in their men's side between 700 and 1200, 1500 ATP players. The women's side have very strong team as well, so they are, you know probably at par with top D1 colleges that are top 10, 15 in the country, right? So these players have extensive experience playing futures, challengers, and all that. But Georgia Gwinnett's not one, right? So there's several others in that as well. NAIA, it's got a little bit lax in their compliance. So what I mean by that is NCAA has very, very strict rules, and we're going to cover some of that as we go forward, about academics and when a player should sign in, and if they turn pro, what the requirements. NAI is a little bit more lax. So you have some players who are older players who decided to give it a shot at pro. They cannot be eligible for NCAA, and traditionally they have come to play NAIA. So that's sort of how NAIA works, and NAIA gives scholarships, both sports and academics and all that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the NJCAA, right? So NJCAA is 2-year colleges. So what it means is you come in, you do freshman and your sophomore year, and then you get an associate degree, but then you have to go find another university to go and do your junior and senior year. That's also a very, very viable path, right? These universities or these colleges are not as expensive, and some of them traditionally have very, very good team, right? Like, for example, I live in Texas. Tyler Junior College is the number one in NJCAA, right? If you look at their roster, they got phenomenal players, players who have pro experience, played high ITFs, played junior slams. They come to this type of colleges, they get better in 1 or 2 years, and then they land themselves in some really good, program, which is very, very competitive. So this is something also for you to keep in mind. Okay, so NJCAA is definitely a viable solution. And the last one that I said I'm not going to cover, which is the California, the consortium of colleges. And there's a college called College of the Desert, which has been very, very prominent over the years. The overall level has dropped down a little bit in that, and we know a lot of people who tried there. They have, like, especially foreigners, have visa problems and stuff. So we decided not to cover it in detail. But anyway, this sort of summarizes the whole division and the governing structure. How colleges are organized. Okay, so I want to move into the conferences, right? So the conferences, so this is all at the division level, right? So now the way it works for each of these division, whether you're looking at NCAA Division 1, 2, 3, or you're looking at NAIA or NJCAA, which has also two divisions within itself, there's generally a consortium of like 8 to 12, sometimes a little bit more, colleges or universities packed together, and that's called conferences. So you can think of this large big structure as the divisions, and then within that you have the smaller structure as the conferences. So the conference teams play against each other in the spring. In the fall, they generally all play tournaments, right? Like, so these are individual tournaments, and nowadays the structure has changed. Many coaches are allowing players to go and play 15Ks and 25Ks. Some of them are even skipping the fall tournaments, right? Because their players are just playing a professional schedule, or at least the top half of the lineup is doing that. The spring is what really matters in college tennis, right? Which is, it starts from January, and then it goes into April or May, right? And that's what really matters. That's what really matters, in this in the spring, as far as the tournaments are concerned. So all these colleges, they play with each other uh, in the spring, and then they move into something called, each conference has a conference championship. So typically that's really important for the college coaches. They want to be really good in the conference, and they want to do well in the conference championship so they can move on to the regionals, and hopefully from the regionals they move on to the nationals, right? So that's kind of the main core way the college works. Through, you come through your conference, either you win the championships, or in some other way you move to the regionals, and then you go to the nationals, and you get to play either the NCAA nationals within your division, or the NAIA or the NJCAA nationals. So that's really, really critical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick pause here, because I got three more things to cover over here, and see if anybody have any questions over here. Okay. If anybody doesn't have any question, then I'm going to keep moving forward. Okay, so you're going to hear another thing as you research and learn about college is something called ITA, Intercollegiate Tennis Association. So ITA is a completely independent body. It's not like a division. It's none of these. So ITA's main rule is they work in consortium with all these governing bodies, right? Like NCAA, NAIA, NJCAA, and their job is to administer the tournaments and the dual matches. So they provide the rules for tennis. They basically provide those, primarily the rules about how the tournaments run. So they are in charge of the tournaments, and that's their only job, right? So they decide the rules of no let, or they decide like what the dual matches rules are, or how the fall tournaments are played, and so on. So you don't need to get too caught up with ITA. You just need to know kind of the role of ITA and what it does, right? For the spring is, and again, as far as the rules go, the spring are team events where teams play against each other. And then there's fall events are tournaments. And when the team events happen, so six players are in the lineup. So, in a men's side or a women's side, so there's, right, start off with three doubles, and then one team has to win two out of three doubles, okay, to get 1 point. So even if a team wins 3-0 all three matches in doubles, they don't get 3 points. They only get 1 point. Or they win 2-1, they get 1 point, right? So and then they go and play the singles, and each singles counts for 1 point each, right? So that's how college tennis works, lines 1 through 6. Okay, if you have more members in the team, so they are generally the backup, and sometimes they get switched around, but six singles players and then three lines of doubles. So that's pretty much it about the organization, about how the US college works overall. Okay, so again, I'm going to just pause here, and I think I got a question here, so I'm going to pause real quick, see the question, and I'm going to answer that. So there's a question from Jorge Alfaro to everyone, right? ITA making an exclusive deal with WTN. What's going to happen to UTR, and why do coaches? What do coaches look at most, right? So let's talk about that. We got a whole slide about UTR and WTN, I think, later in the thing, but we can talk about it, right? So what's the purpose of either of these, right? The UTR or WTN, or a rating. The purpose is for a coach to assess the quality of the player. Is the player going to make an impact in his or her team, and is the player good enough, and how is the player fits in within the conference, right? UTR has been pretty stable, at least in the US. There's probably within like a 20%, plus minus margin, but fairly stable for the coaches. WTN, per my opinion, at this point, is not as stable, right? Because they are working on a limited data set so far. So the pro data is, I believe, it's still not there in WTN. So if somebody is playing only 15 25 Ks, I don't think it's counted, at least the last I checked, right? They may have changed that, so it's not counted. It's taking the domestic results, like from USTA and different national federations and the ITF. But as far as till about couple weeks back, if you do an analysis with WTN and UTR is a little bit more stable. So it doesn't matter what ITA is doing. The college coaches have their own responsibilities to get the best team possible, right? So it's for their job, for their bonuses, things like that. So at this point, till WTN gets more structured, they are looking at UTR. And we talk to a lot of college coaches, and I do not know anybody at this point that's looking at WTN. Now, of course, that can change, right, as more data comes in and it becomes stable. But again, the rate, it's a rating, and but at this point, I would not probably get too caught up with the deal between ITA and WTN. Okay, any other questions? All right, I'll move on to the next slide. So let's jump in right here to the scholarship slide. Okay, hold on 1 second. I'm just going to check one slide here real quickly, and then come back. Okay, very good. All right. So let's talk about the scholarships here. Okay, so this is a nice little slide that shows the scholarships. Okay, now this slide I want to talk about in detail. So let's talk about the scholarship package, what it means, and this is only showing the tennis scholarships, and that's it. Okay, when a scholarship package comes for a player, it's not just only tennis scholarship. Okay, it's a combination of. So a college can look at the SAT score or the ACT score, mainly for American students. It can look at your GPA. It looks at your financials to see this financial need. There is also other areas like church scholarships, other leadership based scholarships, grants. There are several things that go into a scholarships, and of course the tennis is one part of it, right? So I'm going to go through it in a little bit different way. I'm going to go with the women's first and the men's second. Okay, and here's the reason for it. So in the women's, it's a little bit different, especially for most of the Division 1 teams. Okay, not all. The fully funded Division 1 teams, they have 8 scholarships. Okay, what it means is there are 8 full scholarships, and it's something called a head count scholarship, which means a scholarship comes 100%. It covers tuition, books, room and board, and some incidentals nowadays. Okay, but you cannot break a head count scholarships into 2 or 3 parts, so you have to give it 100%, right? So typically, if a girl makes a team and is in top 8 and the school is fully funded, they are offered a full ride just from tennis. Okay, so what happens in that case, they don't need any more scholarships, academic or anything else, even if they're eligible, right? Because you cannot get more than 100%. So tennis covers it all for them. So it's very, very different than the men's side, and I want to go through it. So but that's only for the Division 1. Okay, so it's called the head count scholarships. In the Division 2 and the other divisions, what they have is called the equivalency scholarship. So let's talk about the Division 2, right? On a fully funded D2 team, there are 6 full scholarships available. Okay, but unlike a Division 1 women's team, a fully funded D1 women's team, that 6 can be broken down into 12. They can do 50% for everybody. They can do 3 of them 100%, one 10%. It completely depends on the coach how they want to offer. So there's a little bit more flexibility from the coach's side about, kind of divvying up the pot. So if female athlete gets 20%, say they're not great, but they're good, and they may not make the lineup the first year. So the coach brought him in and said, okay, you come in and I'm going to give you 20% athletic. But that doesn't mean the package is only 20%. That's where the athlete needs to work early in the process with the coach, with their financial aid division, and hopefully you guys know how to work with it, or your consultants know it, and you work with them to come up with the optimum package, right? They look at your academic, they look at your need based and all that, and that girl who received 20% could end up becoming an 80% or even 100% player when all those things have been looked at very, very critically. So it's really, really important to understand how the total scholarship works, especially in a case when it's not on headcount scholarships. Now, going back to the women's D1, in the headcount, there's only 8, right? So the teams keep 12 many times. So what happens to the other 4? They cannot get an athletic scholarships because the 8 has already been given. So those players like the 9, 10, 11, 12, or some of those players, what they do is they come in with other type of money, right? Like the academic scholarships or need based, and some of them maybe just wealthy and just say, what, I want to participate in this team. Like I personally know players who would love to go and play for North Carolina State because this is a phenomenal team. Like they just have, like, Diana Schneider did so well in Australian Open Women's, and she's going to play for them. So it's a great team. Some people want to just get a chance to play, and if they if they get in, they say, what, I don't even want to mess with the scholarships. Okay, so that's how the scholarship package works. Now I'm going to shift to the men's side. The men's side do not have any headcount. It's all equivalency scholarship across all the divisions. So if you look at a Division 1, like any of these top colleges that you hear, right, from the Stanford to Florida, like Florida, I mean, everybody knows now, right? Ben Shelton, look at the guy. He played for Florida first year. He was barely making the lineup. He was 6'7". He started playing, and then and he has never left the US, never played ITF, never left the US till Australian Open. And obviously you saw his results, how he did in Australia. So I mean, so these teams are very, very good, right? But everybody wants to play there, but they only have 4.5 tennis scholarships. So they divide that with the players that they keep in the team. I think Florida keeps about 12. So to divide that in that team base, right? But the players can get the other money as well. And Florida is a public institution, it's a state institution. So the students coming from Florida, they also get in-state tuition, which means their tuition is less. So that helps also for them. Obviously doesn't apply to the foreigners and all that, but again, they get divided, right? The tennis money gets divided among many players, and then the players look for other source of funding. So that's why it's super important to start working early, target those teams, have a plan in place, and then go and work with the financial aid office in conjunction with the coach, knowing that you have a shot of being in the team. And the same thing lies in the D2, NJCAA, NAIA. Now, the one that I want to cover here is the D3s, NCAA Division 3. Both for men and women, there's no athletic scholarships, zero. But the coaches are very creative. Okay, so if the players have a need, financial need, or if they have like good academics, they do help you in working with financial aid to come up with some scholarships. So don't kind of knock it off because it's a D3. It also provides the money, it just does not provide you in the athletic banner. Okay, so this is a pretty important topic right here with the scholarships and the structure of it and how it works and all that. So I'm going to pause and see if anybody has any questions about the scholarships and the process, but because this is a good time for you to ask, because the more you know about it, it's going to help you with your research.
Hey, Anirban, thank you for dragging up this important topic over this. I was looking for the same topic. I just have a query that I have a kid and for scholarship. Can you let me know what is the criteria of scholarship varies college to college?
So the criteria, okay, so let's talk about the criteria, right? So one is, let's look at the athletic side first, the tennis. So I think Sanjay, you asked the question. So if you're looking at the athletic side, what do the coaches want at the end of the day? The coaches may tell you all sorts of things. We want to build the player, we want to build the pro. Really, the coaches want the players to win as soon as possible when they come, because the coaches, a lot of times their compensation truly depends on the performance, right? So they have an incentive to perform, otherwise they get fired. So it's like almost like having a professional contract. So when they look at a player, they try to evaluate through UTR, through whatever rankings, WTN, doesn't matter, asking other people to find out, is this player going to make an impact in my team? Okay. uh if they are going to make an impact in my team, then they are interested. If they are not going to make an impact, but they think the potential is really high, sometimes they take a chance on it. But that's pretty much it. As far as the um hopefully that answers your question, Sanjay, from an athletic side, because I have a couple of other questions that come up in the chat, and I think that talks in the academics. So let's look at those two questions, right? So I have a question from Hore. Please confirm, many D3 give scholarship based on academics. Can you talk about this? What is a good GPA to be considered a good student? And then Jenica asked, in a D3 college, would a coach know how much academic scholarship is possible? So the answer to that, I'm going to start with Jenica's answer. Yes, the coaches have a very good idea, especially if they're a seasoned coach, right? They have been in the college for a while. They know where the bodies are buried. So they obviously know they have some pull within the financial aid, and they help guide. So the coaches play a very, very critical role in this. The expectation is not for you or your consultant to just navigate this with financial aid yourself. If you are part of the team and the coach has an interest, the coach is going to help you, and your job is to keep communicating with the coach to understand what type of monies are going to be coming in, how they're going to get in, and things like that. Okay. These Now, going back to the second question is, can you talk about what's a good GPA to be considered a good student? So that's like, I'm going to give you a consulting answer. It depends on the institution. If the kid is going to a D3 like an MIT, my guess would be they're looking at super elite athletes. I mean, super elite students coming in, right? Not necessarily super elite athletes. So probably I would say in there you're looking at really high SAT score, probably a near perfect score, probably you know close to a 4.0 GPA. That would be my guess, right? If it's a very academic school, there are D3s maybe that are not so academic. So it all depends on the university and what their particular structure is, right? So obviously the good grades cannot hurt, right, on anywhere you go. But these are all great questions in the early process. So what we do in our package is also, one of the things is, when people subscribe to our platform, we not only provide details about all these things, but also we give these questionnaires that they need to sort of ask at certain times. The questions you need to ask the college coaches, when do you ask, and things like that. So these are some very important questions to ask the coaches, okay, about their own colleges, because it depends on college to college what a good GPA is, and what their what their criteria is. Okay. Any other questions we have on the scholarships? Okay, very good. I'm going to move on. Feel free to ask after that also. Like, it's not like once we move that, this is the end of, we cannot come back to a topic. So this is a very common one that's asked a lot of times, right? So pro pathway to college tennis. Okay. So what is a pro, right? So to kind of begin with it, that's also a very important question to answer. Some people think if you have, a pro ranking, an ATP ranking or a WTA ranking, you're a pro. I mean, you don't really make money to make a living, but technically you could be a pro. Or but in our case, we are really looking at pros, people who are legitimately making a living playing tennis, right? So if you look at it here, don't go get caught up too much with the rankings. The rankings may be a little bit dated here in the slide, but if you look at the ATP, look at the number of players that played college recently that have turned pro, right? Like, I mean, we have several of them, Cam Norrie, Tracy. I mean, they're right now they're doing very good. Arthur Rinderknecht, he's from Texas A&M, from my state. He's doing good. There's several players. In the women's side on singles, you see a little bit less, but that's only in the singles side. In the doubles, it's full of them, right? Like, I mean, the girl that won Australian Open from Brazil, I mean, she's a former college athlete, right? Like, Olnos, Danilina, Ellen Perez. I mean, these are like slew of them making a very, very good living, playing, who are former college players. Okay. And obviously these are only, we're looking at like the top 100 players, right? Like the people that are top 50, top 100 here. If you look a little bit further down, there is ton of them nowadays. You go to, I was actually at a futures in Santo Domingo in December. Bernard Tomic was playing, my daughter was playing in that futures. I mean, for the women's side, everybody, like, probably I would say 85% were college players. So there's a lot of focus right now in college, especially if a player wants to turn pro, to help them to become pro. Okay. So in the fall, colleges are also allowed now to sponsor and take players to a certain amount of events, like the 15K, 25Ks, if the players already have points and they can get into the draw. Okay. That was not the case 15 years back, or when I played, like long time back. That was unheard of. Now, the college coaches expect the players that they want to give it a shot, and it raises the bar. Okay. So I want to tell you in this very clearly, if your kid wants to go pro and they're going to a decent tennis college, the coach is not going to come and say, no, I don't like that. They will try to promote that. Okay. All right. Also, I'm going to tell you the few other pros, and I'm going to tell you a couple cons. So here's the other pros. If you look at the top colleges, the top D1 colleges, which have a lot of funding, they are like any professional team, right? It's almost like being, into a Dallas Cowboys or something. If you go to the Stanford, their facility is like a top pro team. Okay. Same with, even if you go to a D2 team or a lower end team, they all have great facilities. So what I mean by that is they have multiple courts. A lot of times they have both indoor and outdoor courts. There's a coach, there's a head coach, there's an assistant coach. Sometimes they also have more than one assistant coach. Nowadays, a lot of colleges not only have one strength coach, but they have a strength coach dedicated. They have a speed coach. They have physios. They have also assistant physios, like trainers who come and help you with, the bandage and the massaging and all that. And they have access to mental coaches. Okay. So pretty much when you look at the program, if your kids are playing tennis and they're playing in an academy, and now you do the calculation right there, that's almost like close to, like, $4,000 or $5,000 a month of support that you get free regardless of your scholarship, because this is outside of the scholarship. Whether you're on a 10% scholarship or you're on a 100% scholarship, you get access to all this if you're part of the team. If you are number one in the team, or you never get to play a meaningful match and you are the 11th player on the team, you still have access to all of these. Okay. So the infrastructure and the support is all there for the player to do it. Okay. The coaches also take you to some of the fall tournaments, and obviously the spring they play mainly the matches, the dual matches, but they are pretty high caliber and there is focus around. So these are all the great things that I talked about, the pathway to college, to pro. So now I'm going to tell you the other side, why a lot of them don't become pro. Okay. So when you go to college, there is it, earlier, like when they're juniors, a lot of players are, homeschooled, or they're doing some sort of an online schooling, or you know a different type of criteria. Their focus is a lot on tennis, and the parents are there and they're kind of on top of them, and so on and so forth. So in the college, the kids are by themselves. If they don't if they don't have the drive, if they are not driving to go forward to be a pro, the college coach, in our opinion, will not push that. They will not stay on top of them and say, okay, you have to be a pro, you have to be a pro, you have to be a pro. Their main goal is for you to perform in college, and they will push you hard for that. That will elevate your level. If you become pro, it's great for the college, good for their, recruiting later, but that's not their primary criteria to make you a professional player. So if but it's a great venue for people who want to do well, they're self motivated. I mean, this is the place for them. Okay. But if your kid's not self-motivated to become a pro at the end of the day, it's not going to probably happen anyway. So that's sort of the summary for the pros and the cons. And then also in the other side, we have also seen, with the several players that we worked with, they could become pro, but once they graduated, they kind of started evaluating, right? Okay, now I have a college degree, I'm living in America, and my friends are getting jobs nowadays, like really high paying jobs, and I have those jobs, and do I want to go back and grind in 15Ks with barely any money? So that becomes their personal call at that time, whether they want to grind this and do this or not. So those are some of the kind of the, because they have a choice at that point, right? If they didn't go to college and they're just playing, probably the choices are a little bit limited in that regard, right? So that sort of summarizes, the overall our view about the college, the pro pathway. So I'm going to pause here and again take some questions if you have any questions on this. So we have a question here from Dhiraj. How D2 women tennis player can move to D1 college and get full ride scholarship? What D1 college coach will look for player join D2 college 1 year back? Okay, so let's talk about the transfer. This was not something that we are covering in this. Of course, this is something in the platform. If you sign, you get the full rules about transfer and all that, right? So players get one free transfer. You come to D2, you come to D3, you come to D1, you want to get out and go and play 1 to 2, 2 to 1. It doesn't matter. You get one transfer without losing eligibility, okay? Which means you don't have to sit out a year, you don't have to redshirt, you can go in and play right away. If a D2 woman player want to go to a D1 college, it's the procedure is same. There is something called a transfer portal. So all the athletes, they have access to the transfer portal. If they decide to do it, the normal courtesy is they have to talk to their coach. They tell the coach, that's a courtesy. It's not a must have. And then they basically put them in the transfer portal. However, as soon as you put yourself in the transfer portal, your current coach will know, and it's almost like a fish market. Everybody knows, everybody sees that you are in the portal, okay? That the risk that you take is if you put yourself in the portal, your coach can immediately stop your scholarship for the next season because they know you're out looking for yourself. So that's the downside. Now, what do the D1 colleges look? The D1 colleges don't care whether you are a D2 player or not. They will look at the UTR, they will look at the UTR, they will look at your performance in college, and they will make the same evaluation like they're taking a junior player. Will this player have a major impact in our team? There are several cases D2 players have moved to great colleges after playing 1 or 2 years in D2 because they were kicking butt in D2, and obviously everybody knows and they know the level. They look at the UTR and they decide. So it has nothing to do with division. It has more to do with the level of the player, the UTR, and the players who they are beating. So that's how the transfers work. So hope that answers your question, Dheeraj. Okay. Okay, so we have another question from Sanjay. Do college tennis players get paid? Yes, they do. So let me explain this. What does it mean, right? So one they get paid in the form of the scholarships, but nowadays also many colleges, not all, offer their players basically cost of living allowances. Okay, so because players have other expenses on top of what's covered, like cell phone bill, right? If you own a car, your gas for the car, things like that, right? Or you want to come home to see your parents, who's going to pay for your tickets? So there are some other expenses like normal life expenses that a player has. You want to go to the movies. So colleges do pay for that, and they pay a lot nowadays. If you are a good athlete and a college really wants you, some of them pay you up to $800, per month. Some pay a little bit less. So that's also very common right now, as far as that payment is concerned. Okay, can you negotiate tennis shoes and strings for the racket as part of the scholarship? So typically, yes, you can definitely ask them. Typically most of the colleges, they provide shoes and strings and rackets, right? Even the lower end colleges do. And if you go to a college, if the kid is going to some college which has no budget and they can barely afford that, I don't know how much room for negotiation there is, but typically that's part of the standard deal, the shoes, rackets, and strings. Okay. Sure, you're welcome, Sanjay. Any other questions on this? Okay, fantastic. So let's look at the prize money rules, right? So this is a very common thing. Junior players playing, a lot of time people ask, well, they're not allowed to play pro, they can't play pro, can we take money, things like that. So first of all, up to $10,000 as a junior, if you're taking money coming in, no problem. Okay. If you take more than 10,000 overall in the year, you can do it. You have to show expenses. So for example, if you took 15,000, if your kid made $15,000 from tennis, $5,000, that's after the 10,000, the delta, the 5,000, okay? You have to show expenses. You can show in a spreadsheet, you can show with receipts. You have to show documented expenses saying that that $5,000 has been spent in tournament and tennis related activities. That's not that hard to do. Every tennis parent that's on the seminar knows how expensive this sport is. So you can itemize it, show it from your string jobs to buying the rackets to buying flight tickets, whatever the case is, you can show that. Okay. Now, couple of things here. How do the coaches know that you made the money? One, if your kid is making money in a 15K, 25K, they're playing futures or challengers, that's documented, right? You can go to the site, the WTA site, the ATP site, it shows the prize money made. Okay. You can't really hide that. If they're making money in leagues in your country, there's a disclosure. You tell them, like a lot of players we know in Europe we work with that plays the French leagues, that plays the German leagues, they pay a lot of money, you know and a lot of the juniors that we know, they get 1,000 euros per match. They make more money playing that than they would play futures. Okay. Some of those are not very easy to find, but if you lie about it in your report when you're actually filling out the compliance forms for your school, that's a risk you're taking, because if somebody finds out and then they talk about it and they tell, they report to NCAA and there's an inquiry, you can get basically decertified, so you won't be able to have your scholarships and play in the team. It's very, very important to kind of know this rule, and just work with it, right? You can obviously talk to your coach about it, be in the compliance, and this is a big part how we help the players, right? What money they can get and what they cannot get, and there's a whole slew of things that we are not covering here, like the sources of the money and things like that, what's allowed, what's not allowed. So we're just giving you the general prize money acceptance criteria rule here. Okay. So I'll pause. Any questions? Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next one. This is a new one, and I bet a lot of people don't know this. Okay, it's called the NIL. Okay, what about money given as incentive by the government? So that's does it count? Yes. So okay, so incentive by the government. So there's obviously like the players that come in, right? So there's players that come in like that are part of the ITF ITF development fund. The list just came out, right? We know several players that have talked to us that are part of that list. $25,000, that's more than that, right? But that's okay, because when you get that incentives by the government, when they're coming in, they're not coming in as a prize money, they're coming in as a form of a scholarship and grant. But you do need to disclose it, and you do need to show where that money where that money is going. Receive 500 pero per month, yeah, to cover expenses, that's fine. You just show that. As long as you can show that, like we said, if it goes, you have to keep this documented. Okay. If you disclose more than they need, that's fine. Just keep this documented, because this is pretty common for many athletes around the world to get it from ITF or from the national federations. In Korea, there's also like the private funding. There's these large companies that assign coaches. They pay for players' travel. They give them this incentive. So this is not uncommon. Just keep them documented. That will not get you. That will not get you disqualified. Okay. So we talk a little bit about the NIL, right? The name, image, and likeness. So, the players, so nowadays players can monetize their brand, right? They can monetize, like, for example, like this is mainly started because of the college basketball and the football players who have big fan followings, and they go and they speak on social media, people come in, ad revenues flow in, right? So nowadays colleges are very aware of this. Even tennis players are being part of it. And this is something you need to know. The rules are not fully formed yet. Okay. Each state has different rule. We are not NIL experts. What we do in our platform, if you sign, we give you all the latest rules. We do not broker deals. There are organizations that broker NIL deals. But we do help you with knowing the rules for universities you're targeting, places you're going, what you can do and what you cannot do. Okay. But this is going to open a whole new door for tennis players and the others while in college to make solid money as they go forward. And this only started last year, so this is still very new. But a lot of athletes are coming in. I mean, they are doing even small things like, okay, I'm going to go and do a ribbon cutting in my local pizza parlor and they'll give me $500. So these type of things are happening more and more now. Um, and most of the bigger colleges now actually have a compliance officer that's focused on NIL. Okay. So I'll pause here again. If anybody has any question, this will be a good time to ask. All right. Excellent. So we move forward. So we'll talk about the tennis wizard, what we do in general. So, some of you work with consultants, and we started this about a couple years back because I was traveling a lot with my daughter, right? Like, in Central America and South America, and I saw the consultants charge a lot of money. So we wanted to bring it down into a platform where there is a consulting piece. You can talk with me, things like that. But obviously, the overall amount, we brought it down to $360. Okay. So for 360, what you get is we interview you, we talk to the player in detail, and we give them a full custom report, right? A report with roughly about 12 universities, and we break it down. Some you're definitely guaranteed, I think, you'll be a right fit for your criteria, whatever you're looking for. Some toss ups, and then some really you want to go but you're not a right fit. And we also educate you in the process, right? Like if you're on UTR, like a 9 men player, and you are coming in as a college and you want to go to Stanford and play in the team, it's not going to happen. So it's very simple because the team criteria is really high, right? So those are some of the things that we help you understand, because there is a place for everybody. Okay. That's the most important thing. I would suggest that there is no there is no one size fit all. Okay. So we and then what we do is we also provide an athlete web page. So we help you create a page. It's a little bit more than a normal profile page that you see everywhere, with your videos and your schedule and your pictures and all that. And then we have a promotion team that does promotion for you, right? So you win a tournament, your kids winning a tournament, you let us know and we promote it in all social media channel. We create the pictures, we do the gifs, we have a whole marketing team that does that, right? So they basically promote you on all the brands. So college coaches can look at it, your sponsors can look at it, your brand image grows. Okay. And then we provide you the recruitment guide, which is a very detailed thing we work with the lawyers to create, which is all the rules that about the gap year, the delayed engagement, right? Like, if you want to take, I took some time off, what happens? You pretty much every rule that is covered. We give you that, and we give you a whole NIL guide also with the rules database. Okay. So that's all of that you get if you pay 360 for the year. Okay. You can also pay 40 for the year. You get everything except you don't get the report. Okay. So because that report takes the time, so if you so that's pretty much kind of like how our model works. Okay. And then the third one is you can just join us free. If you join us free, you can get the athletic web page. We don't promote you, but you can get your web page. We'll build that for you, and then after that web page you can take it and you get obviously all the free content that we put. We put that in there. You have access to that as well. All right. One more thing I want to add over here. If you join, like if you, I'm going to come back to this slide for a second. If you join now, even if you join free and you download our app, you can ask question to me through our app. Part of it is we are testing out certain things in the app, our care plan and all that. So as a thank you for you using it, what we are also doing is we are giving you free access to me. So you can reach to me via the app. It comes in a messaging format, and you can ask me questions on 3 different topics: on college tennis, on the player pathway, because I have some experience in this and I can just give you a second opinion. I'm not trying to go against what your coach is saying, but since I don't have skin in the game, I'm not taking direct money from you. I can give you an independent opinion. And then I can give you some opinion on, questions that come, right? The playing the ITF or college tennis, which is better, things like that. Okay. All right. So there's a few other questions coming in. I'm going to answer that in a second. And I want to talk one thing over here. If you're working on it with all this knowledge and everything yourself, great. Any consultant you work, like consultant like us or anybody else, you can pay them. You can pay them the amount that they ask, but they are not allowed to charge you based on a percentage. If I get your kid a full ride, I will get this percentage. Those are illegal. So it's very important the type of contract that you form, with the school. Okay. So I mean with the consultant, that it can only be a pay for service. All right. No consultant, including us, no platform can guarantee a scholarships or guarantee anything. Nobody does. Okay. If they say they're guaranteeing it, they're lying to you. What they can do is they can do a best effort, because many things come in play. So this is something that is very important, and I want to make sure that you know that. All right. So now what I'm going to do is, before I take few other questions, I'm going to answer some of the questions that came up. Okay. So one of the questions that came up over here is, there is no scholarship on athletics in D1. What about racket, string, and shoes? Yes, for most of them, the racket, string, shoes, they're covered. For most, there may be few that they don't cover it in full, or they may say we give you 1 pair or 2 pair a year. But that depends. That's a good place to start, is talking to the coach. But by and large, those have nothing to do with scholarship. Okay, so Jenica, that was your question, right? So the next one you have from Sanjay: I've gone through your athlete webpage services and social media. I hope it's free. Can you help me explore how it will help my kid? Yes, the athlete webpage is free. The social media, I mean, if you do a free thing and you're coming to us 3 times a year, 5 times a year, we'll do it for free. If it's a lot, then obviously there's a charge to it. But what you know what it helps is, the web page you can promote. The web page has a place for putting your video, putting your picture, putting your schedule, putting your ranking, it all in one place. So you can send it off to sponsors, potential sponsors. It's out in the web. People Google you, they can see it. We run a pretty good SEO for that. And then the social media stuff is basically, through Instagram and Facebook and things like that, that we promote. So obviously it just helps your brand, right? Whether to college or for sponsorships or things like that. Okay. So hope, Sanjay, that answers the question. So do you help us connect with coaches? Okay, so Pradeep asked this question. So this is a very important one, right? Okay, we know several coaches, right? That's kind of our platform. That's on our job. So our job is to really find the right fit for you, give the coaches information, draft that email for you, and send it to you. We cannot send the coach the email on your behalf. Okay. Informally, we can let the coaches know, but that's a fine line that we have to do, because the most important thing is we don't want you to become non-compliant. The main service that we do, and this is something I want to be very honest, because I know many consultants are not, right, is that you come in, you come into that place, and then you know where your kid has a good shot. That is what we come in and we do it. Now when we look at and we analyze and we create the package, we look at a lot of things. We also look at teams where the players are. So if you're, say for example, your son's supposed to come in next year, Pradeep, right, and you have all freshmen in the team there, maybe that's a great fit on paper, but those people are not going away anywhere. So we do the due diligence and we knock that off, right? So that's how we help. What we do not do is, we don't do a direct introduction. Here's Pradeep, and here's his kid, and here's college X, can you take him? That we do informally, where we have the relationship, where we know that we're, because we're not putting you in any jeopardy in compliance. So again, the consultants, their role is to consult you and provide you the big package. The actual reach out needs to really happen from the kid. The drafting of the email, the timing of the email, the timing of the follow-up email, the call scripts, all that we provide, okay? But the onus is on the player. This is very, very important to understand and know about it. That whether you do it yourself or you do it with a consultant, the player takes the lead with the right coaching and the guidance. Okay. So we have another question here. What's your take on showcase? Some players have low UTR and only by showing they play a coach really evaluate. So showcase used to be a phenomenal thing, right? Like, like in South America and Central America, USP is a very big company. It's a very big consulting company that does this. They do showcases. It's a hit and miss. Sometimes in showcases, they used to have a lot of players. Now with so many tournaments, a lot of the good players don't go to showcases. So you're playing lower UTR. On the other side, you do get a chance to show to some of the coaches. They come there, they see it, and sometimes if they like you, they get to build a relationship you that can help. Okay. Again, the showcase is just participating in a showcase is not going to guarantee it. It's definitely going to give you some face time with the coaches. That's the plus. But your UTR and the level has to be there for them to do that. Okay. Do you help us with tracking and guiding the activities required to complete before college process starts? Yes, that's what we do. So we want to make sure we not only give you the rules, we do the follow up, we make sure you're doing and you're staying on track, Pradeep, that you're actually following all this and either you're getting the results or you're not. And if you're not, what course correction need to happen? So that's the job of a consultant. Whether if you're paying a consultant whatever money, whether you pay us 360 or you pay somebody $1,000, doesn't matter. That's their job. They need to stay on top of you. Okay, because there's a lot of little things that happen in this that can get dropped off. Okay, but then you have to do it. We can't send that email for you or make that call, but we will stay on you and say that you do it. Okay, what about SAT? I'm reading that D1 and D2 are not asking, do you have a database of coaches per division? Yes, we have the database of every coach. Okay, for all the divisions, every school, we have the database, all coaches and assistant coaches, right? But that database is also public domain knowledge. You do not need us for the database. You can go and search painfully through every school and go and find it yourself. That is not the selling proposition. Okay, the selling proposition here is really finding the right fit. Whether you find it yourself or we help you find it, finding the fit for your kid, what they want to do, basing that with the reality. One of the biggest discussions that we have is to understand and make sure that the reality matches with what the expectation is. SAT scores, some schools are asking, some are not. So again, post COVID, several schools are not asking for SATs anymore. So that's again depends on the school, and talking to the compliance from the school will help that. Sure, Jorge, I'm happy to talk to you. I'll take down your message here. Uh, I'll take down. Hold on one second. Let me just copy this real quickly before I lose it. Okay. Um, yeah, I'm traveling this week. I'm here in this J2. If this can wait till next week, I'll be back in Dallas. I'll have more time. And I'd be happy to talk to you at that time. Okay. I'll send you my WhatsApp and the email. And again, any of you feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions. How are the homeschool kids evaluated? So, 90% of the players that coming in good schools are homeschooled or they are coming in some sort of an online now. So it doesn't matter whether they're homeschooled or not. There is an accreditation process that happens. Okay. It used to be called back in the day NCAA Clearinghouse. Now it's called the Compliance Center. All divisions have that. So if it's an university like an open university like in India or in US, if they're doing like like my kids go to iUniversity Prep, which is a government school, like it's a public school, but they don't have to go to class. They do it online as long as they maintain the grades. Those are very easy because there's a direct correlation. The only problem that we see is if people are doing homeschool where mother is responsible for all the studying and she is designing the curriculum, there is no there is no standardized test. It's not a standardized organization, right? Like say I'm teaching my kid in my own way, and now I believe my kid has passed 12th grade. That happens in some cases, and those are the ones that gets really tough because there are certain things you have to do to get compliant. Okay, but if it's a normal school, like like in the Laurel Springs in the US, or any of those public online schools in US, or in India, if you're doing open university and all that, they are pretty standard now, because all the divisions know about it. And there's a we actually have produced a list that shows all the compliant requirements for every country, pretty much, for whether they're coming from in India, CBSC, ICSC, open school, or in the US, for different groups. So those I mean, if they're somewhat standard, it's pretty easy to go through. All right, any other questions? Yes. So the question here is, what about the eligibility process for US? Do international students that attend US online school need to go through the process? Everybody goes through the process. Whether they're from US, they're from India, they're from South America, it doesn't matter. Everybody goes through the process. So the compliance process is how NCAA determines uh, the eligibility. Okay, so you have to register yourself. There is a process. Do I need to register my son? Yes. The answer is yes. If they want to play NCAA, you have to register them for an NCAA. If they want to play NAIA, you have to register them for NAIA as well. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, that's pretty much it. So going forward, just download the app and feel free to ask me those questions that you have through that. I'd be happy to text and talk to you, and I can also schedule call and talk to you as well. So it's not a problem. There's no charge for that. If you need our service in lieu specific to this, in the detail, mainly creating the report and helping you with that, um, that would do. Will playing USTA tournaments help? I mean, playing any tournaments help. USTA obviously is more visible. If in some countries the data set is not as easily available, like in India, a lot of people that play the AITA tournaments, the level's very high, but they don't count for UTR. They are not online, so UTR is not taking them. So far, I don't know if WTN is taking them or not. I do not think so. So they are not as visible. So they're only visible by playing ITF. If they're playing USTA, yes. But at the end of the day, USTA, ITF doesn't matter. The primarily they gauge, one of the first thing they look at is UTR. There's no way to avoid that now. That's not the only gauge, but that's definitely an important gauge. And then you build a story around it, right? If the UTR is a little bit low, a lot of kids that play ITFs, their UTR is low compared to only playing USTA. And mainly the reason is, ITF has other challenges. You're playing from multiple surfaces, you're changing countries, one day you're playing in altitude. Like I know that we had Hore here, my daughter actually won an ITF singles last year and doubles in both El Salvador and then in Guatemala. So they have these tournaments together, El Salvador and then Guatemala. One's kind of on normal hard court, the other one's on altitude. So that's a little bit of a problem, like switching right away, going from El Salvador to Guatemala. So some things like that affect your UTR if you're playing only ITFs. USTA is generally more stable. So in that way it helps. But regardless, if you're playing quality tournaments and you're focusing on your performance goals, that should help. So yes, Jorge, we have been there many times, and we love El Salvador. That's one of our favorite places to go and play. We so yes, and for everybody that knows, right in end of February or March, there's a J4 coming up, which is right now J60 in El Salvador as well. Yeah. So okay, great. So these are our and you will get a copy of the presentation. Please follow us on, we share a lot of knowledge on YouTube. We put a lot of videos on a variety of topics, so feel free to check some of them out. And again, I want to thank everybody to join the call today. We still have a few minutes left, so I'm going to pause and take any final questions, and if not, you can always reach out to me later, and would be happy to answer any questions. Okay. Yes, we'll also share the video of the webinar as well, and to the players. Is college tennis the best way to be a professional player? No, it's not the best way. It's a cost effective way that hedges your bet. The best way is if you have a lot of unlimited funding and you provide a coach and you can provide the right infrastructure and you can fund them for several years and try it out yourself. That's definitely is the best way. But that's not a feasible way nowadays. It costs to be a tennis player and really play a full circuit. It costs at least over 150,000 dollars when you're playing in the transition stage. So if you have the money to able to fund that for a period of time, 6 7 8 years, from the time the kid is like 16 17 to 25 26, that's probably the way for you. And then if you have a path for the kid to be successful, if it doesn't work, college just gives you, it just hedges the bet and it gives you another opportunity. But I would not say it's the best way to be a pro player. I would say it's definitely one of the risk averse ways that prolongs your career and helps you give a shot. Can international students play tournaments outside the university? Yes, they can. It happens all the time. Especially they cannot play in the spring. Okay, in that January to April is very tough. They don't let you play that because that's where the duels happen, right? But in the fall they play. They also play in the summer. They can play in the winter. So if you look at the current college players, they're extensively playing futures and they're playing German leagues and challengers and all sorts of tournaments. Okay, which subjects would be better for tennis students? Any sports related courses available? The subjects is a personal choice for the players, right? So the colleges and the coaches do not get involved for the most part. Now, what I mean by that is, if a kid is going and studying, I don't know, like nuclear science, I mean, it's a very demanding course. Tennis requires quite a bit of demand. They may have a hard time keeping up with both, right? But that's a judgment call for the kids. I mean, there are sports related courses also available. Yes, for many universities, they can do a variety of sports related courses, including mental health, physical courses, things like that. But you can study business, you can study economics, you can study whatever. They if you choose to study courses that are biting into your practice time, that's going to be really hard to manage, and then the coach is going to come and have a conversation. But generally, you work with the coach, you work with the timing. What they do is they block the timing and they say, okay, the practice times in the morning, the practice times at night, and then here's when they play. So when you sign up for classes, you have the same classes offered several times. You just don't sign up that coincides with your practice. How do you know which playing time you'll have? It's never guaranteed. No, it's never guaranteed. Mary asked a question, right? You do not know. So it doesn't go by UTR. Like the teams make a call, the coach make a call. The coach is the final decision. There are several things that go into selecting the best team. Okay, there is no guarantee that you will make the team, and even if you make the team, there is no guarantee what slot you will get. Any other question? Okay. All right. So I want to thank everybody for taking your time and joining in. On a Monday morning. Again, thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay, it is strange because if you receive a scholarship, then you don't play. It's not strange at all. That happens all the time as well, because depending on the type of depending of the uh time, very depending on time of the type of the scholarship, right? So like let's look at a team like Florida, right? University of Florida, where Ben Shelton came from. The number 10th guy or the 12th guy, I bet, is probably, I can just take a guess right now, who has never seen a match or a real effective match, is probably, I would say, maybe an ATP 800 level. Okay. They're getting phenomenal practice. They play some matches, but the team is so deep, they are still getting some money, but they're not getting a guaranteed slot. So it all depends on the volume of the players that the team has, and then the best match possible. So that's like really, really important, Mary, that that we understand, like like how this process works. You could go to a team and get some scholarship and play in a team where you're not really getting a lot of playing time, but you're getting a ton of practice and you're maybe playing some of the matches which are a little bit inconsequential. All right, I'll pause a couple more minutes here because to see if anybody has any more questions coming up in the chat. Yes, we can, and that's some of the things that we do. The D1, D2 colleges with the UTR you provided the 9 to 10. So that's not something in the scope. Those are some things that we provide with the players because it's not just a straight UTR. There's a few other things that we look at. So that's part of the service that we provide. When somebody buys the package. Okay. Absolutely, Mary. You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right. I want to thank you, everybody. Hold on. There's another question that have come from Jenica. I have logged from my dad's account. Okay, Jason, David. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. I got that one also. Yeah. And then all your email addresses are here. So you will get a copy of the presentation and our contact. Can you transfer from NAIA to D1 or D2? Yes, you can. It's very common. You can go across any of these. Sure. And the clarity is it's really an individual case, right? So what you can go and research this yourself also, Ayush, and that's one of the service that we provide. We look at the player, we look at not just the UTR, but we look at the tournaments they have played, and then the whole thing is to come up with a story. Your job is to sell the player, right? So you come up with a story for the player, what who the player is, and then find those right fit. So it's not just UTR is one criteria, it's a major criteria, but it's only one criteria. It's creating that story around the player, and that's the job of whoever is doing that for you, whether you're doing it yourself or you're working with a consultant. And that's what we do with the players, and that's the reason the consultants charge, because that takes the interviewing and creating the story. Okay, we still have a few minutes left, like about 12 minutes left, so I can stay on the call. I mean, it's not a problem, so that we can, if you have any questions, I mean, I would happy to answer, because this is your good time to ask. I have a friend, his son with a UTR of 7 was admitted to a D2. So there's, again, guys, I although UTR is important, I want to let you know, okay, let's not get too wrapped on this. There is, if your kid wants to play in college tennis in the US, there is a place for them. Okay, there is a place for them, and there's potentially a place for scholarship for them. Okay, so it is really really important that we totally understand that part. I also want to bring it up here. So we covered quite a bit today in the detail. Mary and Norman, I know I saw that you guys joined a little bit late. So if there is any questions that you have, we covered the scholarships, we covered the process, the divisions, things like that, and you will get a copy of these along with everybody, the whole presentation, as well as the PowerPoint associated. So again, feel free to, Mary, Norman, or anybody else, really feel free to reach out if you have any questions. What we, I can answer all the general ones that we covered over here. Specific questions, that's when we kind of have to get to the consulting route. But also I can tell you, if you don't want to do that, what you could do to do it yourself. So there's obviously ways. It's just a lot of legwork. So we have about 10 minutes left. Just feel free, any other specific things that you feel like that's not been answered here. This will be a good time to ask, and I'd be happy to see if we can answer that. How do we get the best of scholarship from the colleges? So again, this is a great question, Ayush. This is where looking at the full package is concerned. Like it's very important, right? So when you are creating, when you are putting the strategy together, you look at the player, you look at the college, and you say, okay, realistically, what are my chances of getting the athletic scholarships? And then, as I have covered in the scholarship section, right? So then you look at the academics, you look at the grades, the SAT score, the GPA, and you say, okay, what's the realistic chance of getting an academic scholarships? And then you look at your financial situation, and then you say, will the kid get they have any option for getting financial aid, right? So these are the three main ones, and obviously there's a few other ones. And then what we do is we start working, or if you're doing it yourself, you start working with the coach, but the coach doesn't get involved very heavily. They just kind of like guide you. You work with the financial aid of the university to put this whole package together, and they make you fill a bunch of forms, things like that, to see what's the best possible option that they can get. If you have a boy, remember, it has to be a combination of, right, athletics plus academics plus need based. Those are the three main ones. I mean, there's some church based and all that, but those are not prominent for everybody. If it's a girl, if you have a girl and who's playing and qualifies for a D1, funded D1, then they can get, you know they'll get a full ride if they make it to the top 8 of the team, right? For most of those institutions, so you don't have to worry a whole lot in that case. So it's just putting that package, and the strategy is very, very critical, and the timing when you do it. One of the things as consultants should do with you, and what we do, is the timing, because there's a trigger for everything. When do you start? When do you contact them? Because there's this dead periods where they're not supposed to talk to you. There are these NLI signing periods which we didn't cover. So things like that. So there's a general thing that you have to start early, and then you have to be, you have to follow a schedule in following things up and making sure things are happening. Yes, so Ayush, you said for boys, boys, obviously it's harder than girls to get the scholarships, but that's where you put the whole package together to see what's the best option that you can get, given the areas that we talked about: academics plus need-based plus athletics. Okay. All excellent questions, guys. Any other questions? So there's a question for Pradeep. My son was born in the US but never stayed in US. Is he eligible to get in-state scholarships? No, he's not. So the in-state scholarships has nothing to do with where he was born. The in-state scholarship has everything to do with the residence. So if he is residing in Texas, for example, for 2 years, he will get covered as an in-state. So there's very specific rules about, you have to prove residency in a state, not in a country. Absolutely, Sanjay. I'm glad to help. Thank you. You're welcome, Mary. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, I think that covers it all. So I want to thank you, everybody, and again, feel free to reach out through the app directly. uh, Also feel free to follow us, and then if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer later. If you choose to work with us, it will be an honor. We'll try to help you the best possible way. If not, feel free to work with your anybody else. Just make sure you all these things are getting covered as well. There's some Sandeep Prasad. One question here is, can you explain GPA score? Is it computed using certain subjects? So GPA is basically your class grade. So in the US, they call it the GPA. That's your cumulative class grade. So you're going from 9 to 10. You're getting an A in math, B in this, and then there is a number. So if you are in a country like if you are in India or in some place and they're not calling it a GPA, there is a very all these organizations like NCAA, they have a mechanism how they collect it. Okay, so for that, in case of India, they looked at the 10th grade and the 12th grade score, mainly the 12th grade result. So that replaces the GPA. So Ayush had a question here. Is it better to get into a D1 college if there are good players, or maybe less chances in playing team, or a good D2 college but less opportunities? That's completely a call for the family. There's pros and cons in both. If you make it to a D1 team but you are one of the lower ones in the lineup, one is you're always, again, you got to remember all these contracts, the scholarships is all for 1 year. All the college is for 4. Okay, so it's a renewable contract. Now, generally the coaches renew it every year. However, they don't have to. The coaches get changed. A lot of things happen. So if your kid is going into a team and they're like, say, they're number 8 in the team, they're not in the top 6, but it's a great tennis team and they're getting phenomenal practice. But then a new coach comes in, or the coach is trying to move up, their team level, and they bring 3 new freshmen, because the teams also have a cap. They cannot keep unlimited, especially in the men's side. Okay, all these teams have a cap. Some have 10, some have 12. They have caps on the level of players they can keep. So the risk is you get cut, and then you have to find a home. And at that time, you're struggling to show really, because you haven't had a lot of match record to show for in the transfer portal. So that's the risk. Okay, if you go to a D2 good college, less opportunities. Yes, maybe if you're playing, our suggestion is always go somewhere where you can play. If you can't play competitive matches and you're going knowing in that you're going to be in the lineup but not get a chance to play, we suggest that may not be the best option. But again, the family decides. So hope that answers, Ayush. Okay. All right. So we're just about time. So guys, again, thank you very much. This has been very lively, lot of questions. Really appreciate all your questions. And again, feel free to reach out, and thank you very much. And good luck to your kids. Okay. I appreciate all your questions and help. And we are here to help in any way possible. Okay. Thanks, guys. So this concludes the webinar. Bye bye.